Hi, I'm Lucy Faye, here to drop some spicy hot takes on a movie that no one's talked about in months. Knives Out 2019, directed by Rian Johnson, is about an influential family whose patriarch, a murder mystery writer in his 80s, has just died of an apparent suicide. Mysteriously, a private detective from Louisiana was called in anonymously to investigate. The movie follows the patriarch's nurse turned friend and close confidant Marta's journey alongside Harlan's greedy family to figure out what exactly happened. Other primary characters are Harlan's kids, Linda and Walt, their spouses and kids, as well as two local cops who assist in the investigation. Harlan had another son who married Joni and had a daughter, but he died years before the movie takes place. Throughout the film, we slowly learn about the complex and oftentimes exploitative nature of Harlan's relationship with his family. This comes to a head at the reading of the will, which frames the film's conclusion. I've seen this movie 3 times. The first time being opening weekend in the theater, the other 2 being attempts to prove that this movie did in fact live up to my high hopes. It did not. But by the 3rd time I watched this film, I felt I could pinpoint why exactly this movie did not live up to my expectations. But before I get into my persuasive essay thesis about why this movie was a massive disappointment, let's take a walk over to my biases corner. Fuck me. This is a large ensemble movie made up of A-listers, if that concept even exists anymore, and smaller but still very recognizable actors. So suffice to say, these are the actors I am attracted to, or have been at some point in their life, so at this point I just generally appreciate them without experiencing outward attraction. In this movie, there are none of these actors, but for future reference, there are many actors who I blatantly avoid or dislike for no reason other than my personal grudge, which often has zero reasoning behind it. Back to the essay. Murder mysteries are kinda my jam. I like Agatha Christie, I love Sherlock, and Clue is both my favorite board game and my second favorite Tim Curry movie. So when I saw the trailer for Knives Out, I was elated. Finally, in my lifetime, a well-acted, well-shot, interesting, traditional murder mystery with thrilling, smart dialogue and characters that I could actually latch onto. I was supposed to laugh, gasp, be ultra observant to try to notice something that my brother didn't, and leaving the theater to make the short walk home, I was kind of heartbroken. The movie had plenty of the things I said. The actors were great, a lot of the dialogue was good, no one could say this movie looked ugly or bland. That East Coast autumn aesthetic kills me. But none of that matters because I almost fell asleep during the climax of the movie. I don't fall asleep in movies. I have a distinct memory of being 10 and wide awake with my family dead asleep around me during the end of Green Lantern, a very shitty movie. I don't fall asleep during movies, and the movie that I had been anticipating for months bored me to sleep. So before we get into the main reason why I think this movie sucked, we first have to get into my nitpicks. First off, let's talk Chekhov's gun. This is a concept originally used around theater that basically says if in Act 1 you have a loaded gun on the wall, by Act 3 that gun must be fired. The man behind the quote, Anton Chekhov's only novel was a murder mystery, so his gun law has become a sort of staple in future examples of the genre. This movie had 4 obviously referenced props that I noticed which were never used for something important or brought into the plot. These props are the baseball on Harlan's desk, the journal in which Harlan wrote his cause of death, the go board that Daniel Craig noticed in the office, and the spot of blood on Marta's shoe. It's just confusing. When so much attention is brought to these props, entire camera angles are dedicated to pointing them out, and then they're literally never important. On top of the 4 inanimate objects, there's an entire character who has zero purpose other than to be spouse to create a B character. It's lazy and awkward, and for a movie that considers itself to be a modern-day murder mystery, it's kind of problematic. This movie definitely passes the Bechdel test, but it somehow doesn't pass the sexy lampshade test, and that's kind of insane. Back to the topic of lazy and awkward shit, for a movie that is revered for its dialogue and clever plot, what is up with the vomit? Of all of the excuses to help a character give important exposition, Marta straight up vomiting every time she lies is the laziest goddamn one. Like, what the fuck? Murder mysteries are fun as long as we're constantly theorizing and guessing. All this wonder and tenseness building up for an answer. But there are no questions we want answered in Knives Out. Because the cop can just ask Marta, and then she'll throw up, and then we know. No build, no wonderment, 40 minutes, we know everything. I'm bored. Couldn't Daniel Craig have questioned Jamie Lee Curtis about her games with her dad? She would have showed him the box of letters and he would have matched it to the one in Harlan's office. And then he could have figured out on his own that Jamie Lee Curtis is being cheated on by her husband. Or maybe he was looking through Harlan's bank statements to try to find evidence against Ransom or Marta and seen, what's this? Joni's been stealing money from Harlan all this time? It's not that hard to have story progression. Why even have Daniel Craig if he does literally nothing until the last minute when he figures out in a way that wouldn't even stand up in court without Ransom's confession that Ransom had something to do with the plot against Harlan? Which, if I do say so for myself, is very weird and dumb. If we knew going into this movie for a fact that someone in Harlan's family was the one who killed him, who would you suspect? The characters we know a lot about and who were already questioned by the cops, the ones with something to lose if they get a murder conviction? Or the black sheep who threatened Harlan with death who has absolutely nothing to lose? It just seems kind of obvious. Let us move past my small bean complaints to my overwhelmingly big bean complaint. From a pure filmmaking perspective, I don't think Rian Johnson actually did anything wrong. I just don't understand why the core mystery of this movie is explained within the first act. I can't be the only one bothered by this. I mentioned before that Marta gives up family drama, but far more importantly than that, when the police are interrogating her, we're shown a flashback. Marta walks the audience through her last moments with Harlan, and the plan they hatched to cover up her perceived wrongdoings. Keep in mind this is all in the first 40 minutes of a 2+ hour movie. Daniel Craig later points out that this was all Ransom's doing, but like it still happened. Marta gives Harlan the wrong dosage. Harlan gives Marta a plan to help her evade the police and not be convicted of manslaughter. And then he kills himself. So that's the movie answered in the first act. I don't get it. The rest of the movie is literally just Marta lying to the police and throwing them off the case until Chris Evans gets involved, he's wrongly convicted, Marta finds out more about the case, she confesses, then plot twist ending. Cool. Cool. Why did I watch that movie? I learned one thing from an hour and 40 minutes of film, and that is that Marta did nothing wrong and Harlan killed himself for no reason. Frustrating conclusion, but not a bad twist. The thing that's bad is why the fuck did I care about anything else? This movie was meant to be a fucking murder mystery. It wasn't. There was no second guessing, we had no suspicions, every character action wasn't a possible clue towards what happened that night, because we know what happened, and basically everyone involved. That doesn't make sense. For those of you who don't know me personally, or maybe didn't attend my middle school, you probably don't know that I was the detective in an Agatha Christie story called A Murder is Announced. Because of this play, I have a first-hand account as well as a general education about the overall structure of a traditional murder mystery. Let me give you a little outline. The opening scene is either character introduction with hints of drama, or the discovery of the murder. The two scenes are interchangeable but must happen right at the beginning. After the death, there is initial panic, beginnings of a police investigation, and drama shows itself far more aggressively. Most likely the police prove useless, so a outside PI or federal agent is called in. More drama, motives are revealed, a few more red herrings, possibly another death. The investigation dives deeper, the family or suspects become frustrated by how the cops are digging into their lives, and then the climax of the story, which is either a death, a threat of death, or a big huge red herring is proved false. Finally, the story comes to a head as the detective runs through his findings in front of an audience and the killer is revealed. The killer tries to strike one more time, he fails, and the most innocent suspect, who was at one point the top suspect, has a satisfying wrap-up. Cool. Now let's compare it to Knives Out's timeline. A lot less interesting, isn't it? I don't doubt that Rian Johnson was trying to mislead us with the trailers and posters minimally featuring the protagonist. It's his take on a murder mystery. But is that something we need in 2019? Murder mysteries aren't all the rage anymore if one is made not based on a book. In the last decade, it probably has some kind of twist to it. It's a horror movie or Groundhog Day situation, or it's an action thriller, or the person wasn't actually dead. Putting a twist on a murder mystery is like putting a twist on a production of Macbeth. I've seen Soviet Macbeth, I've seen feudal Japanese Macbeth, I've seen Lady Macbeth, and I've even seen Macbeth in space. Sometimes you just want to see Macbeth in Scotland. Knives Out warps the murder mystery genre so much that I would sooner classify it as a crime dramedy. A woman flees the police while surrounded by a group of greedy, bigoted white people whose political dialogue sounds like it's straight out of a sketch from SNL in 2016. As she gets more involved in the case, pieces of the puzzle come together to give us a better understanding of the death and the events surrounding it. Evidence is collected and she confesses, only for the last piece of evidence to be uncovered that proves the protagonist innocent. This movie pisses me off just to think about. It was set up so well. The cast, the setting, the relevant political commentary. But in the end, my recommendation is just watch the first couple of scenes where Harlan's body is found and the family is interrogated, then just turn it off. It's not worth your time.